Welcome to the In Shape Fitness Show. I'm Coach Kim, and today's podcast, I am talking about jumping. I did a podcast workout at the beginning of this week called a hop, skip, and a jump, and I promised that I was going to talk a little bit today about the benefits of jumping and try to demystify the risks of jumping and talk a little bit about why plyometrics is so beneficial, and then a couple of really simple things that you can do that are totally not risky, that have a little like introduction to plyometrics if you're not quite ready to launch off of your floor. So let's start with a story. I love to start with stories because jumping is beautiful. It can be beautiful, at least. I go to the Olympics, or I've never actually been to the Olympics, but I'm thinking about the Olympics, and that's funny. I actually have never been to the Olympics. I just realized my very unathletic husband was telling me the other day that he may get to go because of the work. He's in the entertainment business, is working on something for a I guess some sort of commercial for a client, and he is maybe going to Tokyo this summer, and I got really, really jealous because I've never been. So anyway, my daughter and I are both pretty athletic, and we just love Simone Biles. So we're going to talk a little bit about Simone because, I mean, come on, it's amazing to observe any gymnast. I mean, they're all amazing. From the floor routines, which is where you see, the majority of the jumping, to the uneven bars, the vaulting, and the what's the other one? The balance beam. The athleticism that is on display is just, mind-boggling. The height and the weightlessness of Simone Biles tumbling, however, is just, beyond. It's just, I'm awestruck every single time that I see her. And so my daughter and I picked up a book about Simone. And I think she actually co-wrote it with someone else. It's called Soar. And it's a really lovely, very, relatively short book about Simone's motivation to strive to work as hard as she does. And it starts off with the really tragic early part of her life, because Simone was born in the late 90s to parents who were addicted to drugs and alcohol in Ohio, and her mom did her best. Her dad wasn't in her life at all, but her mom did her best. But there were 4 kids, so there were 2 older sisters. There was an older sister and an older brother, and then there was Simone and her younger sister. And by the time they ended up in foster care, Simone was only 3 years old, and there was the little baby, and then the older the oldest of the kids was 9, and Ashley, and she was kind of big sister kind of parent to the other kids. So they were in foster care. Now the parents, or grandparents, the parents of the mom, the grandparents of Simone and her siblings, lived in Texas. And for a while, all 4 of the kids went to live with their grandparents for a few months. They ended up back in Ohio, though, for another year or so or whatever. But by the time that Simone was 6, her grandparents went ahead and adopted her and her younger sister, Adria, permanently. Then the older siblings stayed in Ohio, and did, made it work with the mom, and then with foster and et cetera. But most early childhood experts agree that by the time a child goes to elementary school, his or her foundations of things like fears and motivations are pretty tough to change, right? So when you begin life with this level of stress and challenge every single day, there's a high likelihood that you're going to struggle profoundly for peace and comfort, for a sustainable life. especially in terms of things like getting an education, having a job, holding down, a job, being, close to people in your life. It's really hard for kids that start with such treacherous circumstances. The Courage to Soar, actually, is the name of the book, is a really lovely book. Starts with, her first encounter with jumping on a trampoline. And it was at the foster family's home. And Simone wasn't allowed to jump on it, right? So she's in a foster home. I guess her foster parents are probably, protective. They don't want to have her take risks. So she is, but she remembers this and remembers that there was this really cool thing in the yard. And so when she goes to her grandparents' place in Texas and realizes that they too have a trampoline, Simone describes it like, being a fish led back to water. She writes how she looks out of the back window from the second floor and sees it. And she's sort of just looking at it or whatever. She finally gets permission. She knows that she's told that she's, obviously it's hers. Like, of course she can get on the trampoline. She bounds out the door and then it just like spent the rest of her childhood there essentially. A lot of people end up with childhood memories of this type. Certainly Simone's not the only person that started out living this way. And the United States has a lot of sort of solving problems to do to square the depth of our physical fitness outcomes at all ages with the amount of money we spend on medicines and wellness, fitness, hundreds of billions of dollars dedicated to getting healthy, but the data don't show that we're really making a mark. So it's fascinating. As a result of a sedentary childhood, less emphasis on physical movement in schools, fewer and fewer children enter their adult lives equipped to sustain a long, healthy life, let alone launch into the air, into double back layouts and handless cartwheels and wolf turns and so on and so forth. I mean, most adults, and you should check yourself to see if you can do this. Most adults can't squat all the way down to the floor on both feet, let alone stick one leg out straight in front of the body and spin around in a circle. That's a wolf turn, something that I only know about because of Simone Biles, actually. But human beings don't spend any time jumping around. Like, people don't jump rope very much anymore. We don't hippity hop, bounce around, on in the yard or on the sidewalk all that much. There are trampolines out in New York City. I can't say that I've ever seen a trampoline in New York City, but privileged kids take tumbling classes. This is one of the other reasons why I don't like gymnastics for my own daughter. I'm raising a daughter in Harlem in New York City, and we're active. We jog and bicycle, and on weekends in the winter we try to ski and swim in the summer and that kind of stuff. But privileged kids, they take tumbling classes and structured gymnastics in after school or whatever sometimes, but they don't like head home and spend their free time on a trampoline. They can't. That's not what happens in New York City. They just move on. If they're really privileged, they move from one structured activity to the next until it's time to go to bed, and then they get up to go to school and finish the day. That's the cycle that kind of the affluent experience. And if you're not affluent, then you're just sort of picking and choosing different things to make the best of the urban life that is our reality here in New York. But back to Simone for a second. The kids that are like Simone, the other gymnastics teammates of on the U.S. team and other teams around the world, those are the kids that practice at home, and those are the kids that practice in the playground. They're in the schoolyard jumping around. cartwheels and backflips and back bends and so on and so forth, right? I grew up in this, and my sister was a gymnast. I grew up in a little part of Tidewater, Virginia, and we always went to this place called Gymnastics Incorporated. And I do have the advantage of being able to get my daughter over there sometimes when we go to visit my family. But it's been around, this enterprise has been around for 30, 40 years, and a competitive gymnast might start with a couple of classes a week, but they always end up, by the time they're in middle school or so, if they're going to make a commitment, even to the end of elementary school, they're there 5 days a week. And those are the kids that go farthest with the sport. Those are the kids that, jumping is is part of everything that they do. It's a natural movement. The majority of the kids that go to these kinds of programs, though, they do sit the rest of the week, and that's one of the main reasons why physical fitness is so difficult for us. We make it complicated because we want it to be, we set out to sort of structure it within the very busyness of our lives, but we spend the rest of the time sitting on our butts. And that, vacillation between completely sedentary and then this sort of little spontaneous bursts of activity just a few times a week is not enough. So, just want to go through the floor jumping sequence for a second that Simone Biles performed at the Olympics back in, where was that? It was in Brazil, I think, right? I think that's where it was. The Rio Olympics. And it's called the Biles now because it was... Oh, sorry. On the vault, let's see. So it's the record number or the record height and rotations and twists and landings because of her sort of the risk taking, the unusual combination of movements that she can do at any given time. One of the few dozen that she can of people around the world who are able to move her body in this way with the precision and the enthusiasm that she has, like the joy on this girl's face, young woman's face is just amazing. And it brings it out in us that we feel the amazement that we experience even as spectators. It represents the best that the human body can be, the most advanced of human abilities, and the most dedicated of human minds. Simone, if you ever hear this, just thank you for motivating me and my daughter and my company, and everything that you do is just such a source of inspiration. So launching the body off of the floor and back onto the ground seems really risky to so many people, to pretty much everybody that has dealt with some sort of challenge in terms of maintaining their health and their fitness level as they get older. How can the bones not break, right? How does the pressure not damage your infrastructure, your knees, your ankles, your back? How about the arch, your toes? Most people don't really think about the specifics, but they know that they think that it's a really risky endeavor. Like, it's got to be, right? The brain, it's like, the brain up and at the top of your head, kind of thinking about how intensely risky it is for your feet to respond so quickly to that activity and not hurt the body in the process. But I want to talk a little bit about the basis of plyometrics and how important it is that we think about the plasticity of your neuromuscular response and the health of the nerve endings as a component of the purpose of exercise. Because exercise is not just beneficial in terms of burning calories. It is, beneficial in terms of burning calories. It is certainly beneficial in terms of boosting energy, your metabolism increases, and that helps you maintain a physique that is manageable for the size of your frame, and will help you feel good and fit into the clothes you want to wear and all that other good stuff. But it's also important in terms of what goes on inside the body. And nerve endings, nerve response, the health of your neurons is a huge part of the health of your body. Nerve endings are not mature when people are born. Babies, in fact, are not born with complete neurological function, and the connections between the brain, the central nervous system, and the peripheral nervous system. These vital mechanics continue in their development well into the first years of a child's life. Most experts agree that feet are endowed with comprehensive nerve terminations, like the complete expansion of the peripheral system, by the time kids begin to walk. But it doesn't really stop until the body stops actually growing physically, right? Until puberty, when your bones, your muscles, and your blood vessels and your nerves are developing all the way up until that point. Once nerve endings have taken up permanent residence in the lower limbs, they're responsible for the feedback loop of sensations that occur at the feet, right? So hard surfaces, soft surfaces, avoiding a rock, accidentally stepping on a rock, pointing the toe, reaching up to your tippy toes. All those sensations, not to mention things like the heat and cold and various forms of pain, are vital communication topics that take place between your feet and your head at all times. Unfortunately, sensations lose their luster as we age. Even in the healthiest of people, the response time decreases slightly, and you're more susceptible to the withering and long-term damage that could possibly that occurs as a function of getting older. Making matters worse are really crappy healthy habit or unhealthy habits. Specifically excessive weight gain, but more than excessive weight gain, it's the sedentary existence. It's the real estate is part of it, right? So excessive fatty tissues in the body slows response rate down. Okay, so simple real estate, like the surface area question that I sometimes refer to as the answer to everything physical in the world. The simple real estate is part of it, with fatty deposits invading space that the body would otherwise not have to share. Nerves and soft tissues live in crowded corridors of activity. And then fatty deposits develop their own nerve endings. Signals are having to traverse more complicated routes. And that science is sophisticated. It's actually way too sophisticated for me. I'm not a medical doctor, but understanding some basics, like that the most direct route from your head to your toes is actively utilized, and those pathways are meant to be, protected and stay clear, is a simple concept that you can, kind of glom onto to grasp and use as your maybe a compass for driving the choices that you make about your activity. So things like numbing of your toes, poor circulation in your feet. The blood supply, by the way, for your feet is remarkably limited, which is why injuries in your feet take such a long time to heal. So you have a higher chance of imbalance and injury as a result of this slow but sure deterioration of soft tissues on the inside of the body. Not talking about your strength of your muscles and your athletic performance per se, like your soft tissue build, but the action potential, the response of the soft tissues is driven by your nerves, right? So activating the neurotransmitters in your feet, which is what plyometrics is a clear resource for you as you fight that effect as you get older. Now, some people can't jump, right? And I talk about plyometrics in terms of the really simplest stuff. Generally speaking, I'm much more apt to get people to do things like really small bunny hops. I love jumping rope, though I know it's really cardio heavy, and so it's hard for people to sort of love jumping rope. But jumping jacks, bunny hops on one leg, small squat jumps, those are really simple equipment-free ways to add plyometrics and, add like a 30-second jumping spell into an otherwise circuit of, lunges, push-up, plank, whatever. And you've got a really nice, well-rounded, total comprehensive body work routine that hits all the marks. And plyometrics is one of the one of the facets that you really don't want to ignore if you are striving for a complete healthy regimen. So, can you incorporate plyometrics into your world, into your life, if you can't leave the floor with both feet? Yes. The answer is yes, you can. The easiest thing to suggest is skipping. So a skip is not as intense as a hop, but we did the hop, skip, and a jump this week as the workout. And if you haven't checked it out, go to the muscle maintenance channel for In Shape Fitness, and you can find that workout there and a bunch of others, in fact, hundreds of them. But speeding up a movement and the changing of directions in your movements is a really good way to activate and or increase the stimulation of muscle tissue via the kind of plyometrics concept. So whether let's just say you're sitting at your chair and you start tapping your foot. And I don't mean like a little musical tap where you just lift up your foot an inch off the floor or something. I mean, lift up the knee, bring the knee into the air a couple of inches, maybe 3 or 4 inches, and tap the foot down. All right, like a nervous sort of Nelly maybe. But tapping the feet rapidly is plyometric at its most basic essence. Now, you would want to do the same amount on both sides of your body. The dormancy of the nerves that cultivates this immobility and the loss of balance. There have been studies of this. Tapping your feet actually does make a difference in terms of keeping blood circulation going, preventing things like neuromas and other neuropathy, conditions of neuropathy, that numbing of your feet, which is what it really is, tapping your feet can really help that. So skipping and tapping your feet. There's another variation of the foot taps, by the way, that I like to have people do just to activate the side of the body too a little bit, is to pick up the foot and tap out with your leg. So keep the knee and the ankle in one straight line, but pick up your foot and tap out to the side. So moving every day, moving willfully every day is the mantra I talk about every single week. And we always pick a topic that relates to either some recent news or to some cool facet, some cool story that I know about a person's exercise life, something that we can admire and use and apply for our own lives. Today is, it's a short podcast. It is really about thinking how the inside of the body affects the activity levels that you want to pursue in your workouts, whether they're gym-based workouts or you're bucket listing a marathon. Jumping, the plyometric component of your exercise regimen, the activation, the maintenance of the activation of your central and the peripheral nervous system predominantly is what plyometrics is based in terms of your lower limbs. You'd have to get on all fours and do some things like monkey jumps and push-ups with claps and that kind of goofy stuff to add plyometrics to your upper limbs. But we're mostly concerned about your lower limbs in terms of this, because your lower limbs determines your mobility, and your mobility, your ability to move around, determines your quality of life. So give it a try. Add some skipping, add some jumping jacks if you can, add some foot tapping at your desk. Have a great weekend and a great week. I will be back next time with another new episode of the In Shape Fitness Show. And give us a call if you have any questions, or send us a note at bodybyinshape.com. Have a great day.